All right. Who wants to start us?
Why don't you start us, Jansen?
All right. Who's second?
I'll go second. Jansen's asleep
I'm asleep.
on this
That's okay.
episode.
I just gotta get back up. I gotta get up. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
run. Yeah, we'll
That's
say
right.
some unsavory things, keep you on your toes.
I'm Jansen,
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sky.
and this is the weekly pop-up podcast where we discuss all things pop culture. And this week we are continuing our discussion of horror because if you didn't know, it's still October, spooky season. Are you guys spooked out? I'm spooked out by what's behind Sky right now, which I'm sure will come up in our discussion
Absolutely.
tonight because
Yeah.
we have a combined discussion. We took a break last week. You know, you got to take a break every now and then.
Yeah.
A little mental recharge during the pandemic. And so last week we were going to discuss thriller movies or really movies in general that are borderline horror, maybe considered. Some might consider them horror, some might consider them thrillers. So we're going to combine that. And we're going to also talk about, I believe, monsters / spiritual horror. Is that correct?
Yeah,
guys?
like paranormal, monster, and some of that may bleed over into the next episode as well.
Of course. So we've got a jam-packed episode. So I think we want to
Stuffed.
get right into it, except
Yeah.
I want one weekly recap. I feel like we should start doing those more.
Yeah.
Just one big topic or two big topics. Don't have to
Mhm.
delve into it. But the death of Quibi, guys. So
I hardly
quick.
knew ye.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hardly knew you. I
didn't.
told Megan, my wife, I said, "Oh, Quibi died," and she was like, "Do you know anyone who watched?" I said, "That's the point, exactly." Like,
Yeah.
It
and
was
I
the
tweet.
worst possible time for it to come out during a pandemic where people, aren't on their phones as much. They're on their TV.
That's true.
You
I
know?
don't have to be on my phone. I'm not sneaking at a lunch break having to watch. I did tweet. I said, "So now all that Quibi stuff's just going to be free on YouTube." Is that right? Because
No.
they had a couple interesting short things that like I
Yeah.
would watch. Like
I-
I'd watch The Most Dangerous Game with the Hemsworth brother and Christoph, what's his name from Django Unchained?
Christoph Waltz.
Waltz. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
Christoph Waltz. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there was ever going to be a good time
No.
for Quibi. It
No.
was kind of like a half-baked idea.
But
Like
they pushed
everyone's
so hard and they had so many like huge names,
right.
which was their only selling point. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it was like $1.8 billion is how much they raised or
Yeah.
got invested to that. So like
who put their money in that?
the guy who what's
Really
his name?
rich people.
The guy who spearheaded that had like God, I'm forgetting it now. But I'm pretty sure he had like helped build HBO and then went over and took care, was part of Netflix like push to create original content.
Maybe he's
And
just too early.
I don't think so. I think they should have stuck with one of their major premises instead of both. Either create content that really is, like
A
these
quick
web
bite.
series, like these 5 to 15 minute things, and just create a bunch of 5 to 15 minute content that you can access anywhere, or create something that's exclusive to phones but maybe has more diverse content. Because the phone thing, like how many people do you know I like actually just watch Netflix and like Hulu, Netflix, all of that stuff? They have an app, right? You can
Yeah.
watch
They
on
do
your
have
phone.
an app, but I'm
So
saying if anyone was going to buy into Quibi, like it would be me because I watch everything on my phone. I have
Mhm.
no problem watching Netflix on my phone, Hulu on my phone, any of that. But you're
Mhm.
right, I don't need like another service for it. But
Right.
like if it was going to appeal to anyone, it'd be me, and it never did. Like never once was I even like, oh, let me get the free trial. I didn't care.
I didn't
How much
care.
was
I
it? Do you
never.
guys know? Per
Come
month.
again?
How much was it per month? Do you guys
Ooh,
know?
I don't know.
I mean, I would say at least $4.99, probably
Yeah.
all the way up to $9.99 a
Yeah,
month.
probably.
I'm sure they had a freemium option as well, where you could just get an account and there was some free content. But
Looks
Well, see,
like
that's the thing. Why didn't they
$4.99
just?
with ads or $7.99 without ads. $7.99 you can get, I believe, Hulu with
Yeah.
ads
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
watch anything I want, really.
but for $7.99, you're essentially, I mean, I guess if you found a bunch of stuff that you like on there, but you're paying $1 a minute for whatever content that you're
Yeah.
watching. So
I mean,
just
they
a
had some big stars, some really
Mhm.
high concept ideas, but
yeah.
The only reason I asked if it was too early is because I listen to Spotify at work, and they have these Samsung ads, and they keep advertising this TV that is made vertically, so that you can watch
That's stupid too.
It's so stupid, but I'm
That's
like, is the whole
so stupid.
industry pushing for this? Because I don't hear any consumers asking for it.
no.
Like, if you
No.
want a vertical, most people these days are just going to buy like a computer monitor and flip it vertically. And again, I
Yeah.
don't want that, but I'm saying like for gaming or something like that.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
need
I
a
see that.
TV that's like that.
This kind of feels like how for like 5 years everyone in the movie industry was like 3D is the next
3D.
big thing. Everything's coming out in 3D. We're gonna get Thor in 3D. We're gonna put The Martian in 3D. Spotlight in 3D. Like,
Yeah.
like
Well, James
why?
Cameron's still holding on to that, with Avatar.
I get it. I do. And Avatar was part of that problem, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody went to see Avatar, and everybody, after seeing it for the first time, was like, well, now I guess I'll see it in 3D.
Right.
I think IMAX was like a big winner because people were like, we're not seeing it in 3D because we want to, because we want to see IMAX, and it just happens to be in 3D.
Right.
Just ride the ride at Disney and move on with your life. It's a great experience.
I did get-
You feel the beast breathing like as you're flying. It's awesome.
I can't wait.
You gotta go, man. It's only like
Well,
a 4.5
actually, that's a
hour
good
wait.
segue.
So no biggie.
Into
That is a
what
good
we're talking about, because horror films also daddled with 3D, right? Like
Yep.
Friday the 13th Part 3 immediately comes to mind. It was
Mhm.
Friday the 13th Part 3, and then they put 3D.
Right.
So perfect. And
Jaws 3D.
Friday the 13th,
Jaws.
3D.
yeah.
Jaws
that's
3D. Yep.
hmm
Great.
Uh,
It's such an easy,
It's a real easy
it's
gimmick.
so easy, like
Yeah.
pun to make. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's easy. Like I'm pretty sure Spy Kids 3D was a thing.
Yep.
Well, with the idea of making 3D horror films, like, of course that was so enticing. Like, who doesn't want to see, blood squirted at them if they're in the horror film theater? Like
If you're there, if
that's a
that's
good
what you're there
concept.
for, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that is, or like maybe a knife misses, someone dodges, and
Right.
it is a good concept.
Mhm.
There was
For like any genre, like it's a good one to go with.
there was a great movie, and we're talking about thrillers. But there was one. It was called My Bloody Valentine. And if you guys have ever seen Supernatural, Jensen Ackles, he was like the main character, and yeah, it was filmed in 3D.
Mhm.
And the murder weapon is this pickaxe. And there was a scene where they throw the pickaxe, and it's like it just
That's
swirls
pretty cool.
right at you. And
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. It's a silly movie, but I had some fun with it.
It's it's not the best movie, but it's fun.
It's
And
fun.
that's all you want from a horror movie. It's just a couple of cool kills and some campy fun.
Yeah,
Um,
if I know a horror film is 3D, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have fun with this movie.
well, my favorite part about movies that were like that bank on 3D is watching them in 2D and like watching all like the 2D versions.
The stuff
of the gangs.
that's supposed to be 3D,
They're
and you're
just
like,
like,
what?
ooh, they're really exaggerated like movements towards the camera, and you're like, man,
Yeah.
I wonder if that even landed in 3D. But we're talking about thrillers, so I guess let's kind of try and define our line here with what's just like a thriller with kind of spooky elements and what it crosses over into horror. Does anything come to mind for you guys that kind of comes close to that line, or it maybe falls far on one side or the other?
So I kind of made a list, and my thriller definition, I kind of really went kind of along the spectrum, something that really wouldn't be considered a horror, but I think is kind of a thriller, all the way up to something that really kind of blurs the lines there. And for me, a thriller is really anything that kind of gets me on the edge of my seat, even if it's slow paced. I know most time we think of a thriller as really bang, 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 and that might be some of the better ones, but I think a thriller is anything that's kind of suspenseful, keeps you on the edge of your seat, and might have like a dark tone. That was kind of my definition for it. Before I really get into my list, I want to say, since I did watch it, I watched Hubie Halloween, which is not a thriller,
No,
and it's not a horror movie,
but
Is it a
Halloween
comedy?
adjacent.
but Halloween adjacent, as we were talking about. Not Adam Sandler's worst movie ever. Not his best movie ever.
A ringing
As I
endorsement.
as I said in my review, my daughter will probably love this in a few years because, like, it's wholesome. It is like his most wholesome movie, probably. Like, you come out like with a clear like anti-bullying message,
Mhm.
and there are some funny parts, but overall, I mean, I wouldn't like seek it out again.
Was
See,
it a smart move on Sandler's part coming off of Uncut Gems?
Define smart move. I mean, for
I mean,
what?
he was on a career high
He
with
was
Uncut
on a career
Gems,
high,
you
but if
know?
you're looking at like money, this has to be part of his Netflix deal, I assume.
Oh
I
yeah,
imagine. Yeah.
100%.
Like, I feel
100%.
like he's just churning out content like a sweatshop worker. Like, he's just like, I'll write a script. I've just got to make 6 of these things, and I'm making
Yeah.
like $1 billion.
Do you
I
think
mean,
this sets him back though from doing another like critically acclaimed movie?
no, because I
No?
don't think the ones right before Uncut Gems were anything to write home about. Like the Do Over, the one with Jennifer Aniston was okay. On
Murder
the
Murder
Mystery?
Oz,
mystery.
yeah, that was okay. And our boy Pat saw them at the premiere, if we'll recall. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's get into the thriller. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that since I did watch that. So I started, like I said, and this is going to go in order of like not horror-ish to getting up. But like the first one that I kind of came to mind was actually like Gone Girl. There's
Okay.
some murderous stuff in there. It is
Okay.
a thriller. You're kind of, murder mystery type thing in there. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, but not a horror movie. Then we get into a little bit faster pace, and I watched this recently, and so I had to put it on there, and that was Snowpiercer. Again, not horror, but there's a lot of questions. Are we going to get into a horror realm? And
Mhm.
also, like, a lot of the unknown for me is like the quote unquote horror, like, because we could go that way very quickly. I feel like in like a Snowpiercer. Then we get into a Shutter Island, which is really on the edge the whole time.
Okay.
Very dark. I'm just saying, could get there. Then we get to Prisoners, which is not a horror movie, but there are some horrific things in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what'd you call it last week, Sky, or 2 weeks ago? Torture porn, I think, is what you
hmm
mentioned. It's very close to that, although you don't see it all. But that stuff with Dano, what's his name?
Paul Dano,
Paul Dano.
Paul, I
That's
know.
it's messed up, man.
the
That'll
Riddler.
haunt you at night. The Riddler, that's right. Number 5, so we're very close now. I've only got 6. It's The Platform, which I'm sure
Mm.
you probably haven't seen.
Have not
and
seen it. No.
Nobody has probably seen this listening to this, but it's a foreign film on Netflix, and it's really good. And it's very similar to a Bong Joon-ho movie. I said that right? Did I say that right?
Mhm.
Okay. Yes. Where it's all about like class and things. But essentially, the concept of The Platform is all these people live in a square room, and there's a platform that comes down every day. There's a square hole in the middle, and there's a platform that comes down every day with food. And if you live on the top floor, you get your pick of food. If you live on the 300th floor, all you have is what people didn't eat. And so every month they switch the people around to random places. So number 300 could come up to number 1. So of course they aren't usually very they aren't thinking of others at that point. They haven't eaten in a month, so they are, grounding. But it gets very dark, and there's some gore and things like that. So it's a really good movie. It's a thinker, but it's pretty close. And then the closest one for me that would probably be considered horror, but also a thriller, is A Quiet Place.
Okay.
You got
Okay.
monsters, you got scary. Sky, I see you shaking your head. What do you think, sir?
That's a horror film.
It is a horror film. Okay, see, that's what I was wondering. If it
Yeah.
was a thriller, if it was horror. And so it's right. For me, it's right on the line because it's not, jump scares the whole time. And obviously there's, not, you only see the monsters a few times. Really,
Mhm.
most of it is the anticipation of what
Yeah.
it is.
Mhm.
Of course, it starts out with it and then it ends with them. But for me, that was right in the middle for me personally, just because there is a lot of like also great storyline going on that, like, I don't know, just with this family. Not saying that horror can't have that, but it's not just constant, slash and go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think what you're probably leaning towards with thinking that it's, a thriller is Emily Blunt's performance, John Krasinski, the kids. They all delivered some riveting performances that you don't really see in horror films. You see those more typically in thrillers. And that's just the clever writing that the film had in the directing. So
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking about this earlier, something that kind of came to my mind was the original Terminator movie, because I think you get to Terminator 2, it's a lot more sci-fi, action, adventure. But I think that first Terminator movie, excuse me, has some kind of like classical horror elements with like the monster being obviously the T-100 and the final girl, like some classical horror elements, but is still mostly a thriller. But I think that one kind of like rides the line because there are some like jump scares as he's like busting through walls and stuff like that. And then one of my personal favorite movies, which I think comes like right up to the horror line, is something Seven, because I don't. I mean, it again. And I think serial killer movies kind of
they
approach
blur the
horror,
line.
yeah, which without actually getting there, especially if you don't have like the murder scenes in them. If you're just following like the detectives and trying to figure out who the killer is, then you don't really get those like, oh my god, the guy's jumping out and killing me. It's more like, what the heck is going on? There's all this darkness, and I think what Seven does really well is like taking you away from like the actual murders, but everything you can imagine outside of what you're seeing on screen is like super dark and maybe even scary. And I think a movie like Silence of the Lambs or any of the Hannibal Lecter movies, I think you could watch one of them and be like, oh, this is like a thriller series, and then you can watch another one and be like, oh, maybe this is a horror series. So um, I think those are the kind of movies that we're like talking about here, where they're really right on line, or like the movie that's in Sky's background, The Strangers, because
That is a
yeah,
straight up horror movie
Well,
in
yeah,
my
see,
head.
okay,
I
now
In
get
this
my
it.
kind of
head.
goes with Sean's point, though. If you're thinking about a movie, um, you know, that has serial killers,
Mhm.
and if you were to take like Scream or The Strangers, and you were to get rid of these masks that they're wearing, that's what gives it a horror element, is the mask, right? If you got rid of the mask, then it's very easily considered to be a thriller, right? It's the
About like
mask that
a
gives it that horror element.
what about like a in that case, what about like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre? I believe he has a mask sometimes, maybe, but like he's
Yeah,
straight up just like murdering people.
Mhm.
yeah. And they're butchering people. Like the whole family is just, they're eating
Yeah,
flesh. That's their whole deal.
right.
Um,
And
it's horrific. It's
yeah,
things that we don't really see, but I mean, yeah, it's still a thriller.
yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with like the delivery of the plot, right? Because if you take something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you put it outside the victim, right? So where you're following maybe someone investigating the thing, or like, hey, my sister's gone missing. Does anyone know what happened to her? And he finds like her bone or whatever, her car all bloodied. Like then it kind of gets to more of the thriller side because something terrible's happened, but you're not really seeing the terrible thing happen. You're I guess the story is driven by the not the victim of the horrific act, but the outside world viewing it, right? And I think that scary movies typically, they are you're in it with the victims the entire time. And some thrillers, but I think you're more likely to cross over into that scary horror movie territory when the like quote unquote audience is part of the victimized group, like you see in the typical slasher films or in like haunted house movies or stuff like that.
No one ever asks, what's wrong with the killers? What's wrong with them? What's going on in their head?
um
I think that's where, for me, and we mentioned it last time off the top of our heads, but it really, I think, is one of the best intersections of, I can't tell which it is. And that goes back to like The Purge,
mhm,
because you are with the victims for a lot of it. But you are also, since it's such a different concept, you're also sometimes with the guys who are perpetrating it, or the girls, whoever. And so I think it just gives it, as Sky said, it's horrific what's happening. This is something that does not happen in everyday life, and sometimes it's very quick. Somebody just gets shot. Sometimes it's much more personal and gruesome. So I think that it does such a good job of like blurring that line, because when I watch the birds, I'm not particularly scared. I'm more just like on the edge of my seat, kind of wondering like what's happening, what's going on. Are they going to make it out? In a typical horror movie, I'm like, they're probably not going to make it out if this goes how I expect. So I don't know. I think The Purge just does a great job of combining them, or
Hmm.
most of the Purge movies.
I think the definition of horror, which I think I said last week, a couple of weeks ago, is that anything that can't be explained in our world, right? So that's like kind of what separates thriller from horror. But again, I think that anything that can scare people, that's kind of like their own personal definition. That's why Criminal
Hmm.
Minds does so well. It's a show based around the thriller element, and people, are terrified by this show because it's things that they don't see, it's things that they don't experience, and it deals with some real stuff. So I think I I understand the definition. I don't necessarily agree with it,
Mhm.
because I do think that it's just personal. If you're
Hmm.
afraid of it, you're afraid of it, and classify it as a horror.
Hmm.
And what were some of yours? Did you mention yours other than maybe The Strangers?
So for me, I think Sean's Seven, I think was probably the film that really first hit me as being like, oh wow, this is a really well done thriller. Of course, Psycho, you know,
Hmm.
Hitchcock. But for me, I think there's been two thrillers that have stuck with me. One of them is more recent, but the first one that really hit me, and I still think it's probably one of the best thrillers of all time, is Mr. Brooks, with Kevin Costner. Fantastic movie, really,
Wow.
really great. Have you ever
Yeah,
seen it, Jansen?
I have not.
I have seen it.
I'll have to put it on my list.
It's certainly interesting. I mean, it's a it's almost kind of like the joke you just made, Jansen, about what about the killers? Like what we never see it from their perspective, and that's kind of a movie where they get into like the literal mental illness of the of murderer.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen the movie I'm about to say, American Psycho. But isn't that similar? Of where
American
it's
Psycho.
at least
Yes,
from the
Yep,
killer's perspective.
yep, yeah. American Psycho is
I
from the
always see
killer's
clips
perspective. Yeah,
from Screenplayed where they'll play like a couple of his scenes, and I
yeah.
always
He's
enjoy them.
incredible in that
yeah,
movie.
yeah. You should
Christian
really
Bale.
watch it.
You should watch it. It's a great American thriller.
Yeah,
Horror. It's not quite horror. I think it's just a almost like a gore thriller, honestly.
I would
it's a
watch that.
psychological
Yeah,
thriller
I'd watch
for
Yeah.
that.
sure.
And
Uh,
then Sky, what was your second one?
and then Get Out. I think
I,
Get Out is
I
probably
was
the best thriller of recent years that I can
mhm.
think of.
See, and
To
I was go ahead, Jensen.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna bring Get Out in the same breath as a show like Black Mirror, right?
Hmm.
Because again,
Yeah.
I you could make the argument that it's not really horror, but then some episodes leave you like spooked to your core. Just like, man, like I can't watch another one. Like I have to, watch an episode of The Office just to cleanse my palate before I go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
so
It's
Well, and like
heavy.
Sky said, it's so subjective, and
mhm,
yet, like, I can, for most movies or shows, like, so clearly say in my head what it is. Like, immediately, I know, like, in my head, Get Out is is a horror film, and Black Mirror is a thriller in my head. Like,
mhm.
Do you know what the creator?
99%.
Do you know what
Come
the
again?
creator of Black Mirror thinks that his show is?
What's he think? Probably like I would guess a documentary film,
Like
or like a take on actual culture.
a dark
Sean,
comedy.
he thinks it's a comedy. He
Yeah, a
writes them
black
as
comedy.
comedies.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
He thinks they're hilarious.
Yeah.
95% of the episodes I think are thriller. The one episode that I would say is horror for sure is the one that's actually like a horror movie. Like he's in the old house and he's got all this,
Oh, the
they
video game.
yeah, the video game. Like they
Yeah.
make him go into the house. Even the one with the animatronic dogs, I think that's a thriller. Even though that's pretty scary.
Did
The
you ever
thought
see
of
him in
that.
Overlord? It's the same guy. It's Kurt Russell's son. I can't
Yeah,
think
it
of
is
his
Kurt
name right
Russell's
now.
son.
But he did. Did you guys ever see Overlord?
I
I
don't
It's
didn't
think
see
so.
amazing.
Overlord.
Is that the one where he has like a program in his brain or something? Am I
No, that's
this? No.
Upgrade.
Upgrade. I'm thinking of Upgrade.
Overlord was about it's in Nazi Germany and the Nazis
Wyatt
have
Russell.
it's it's very similar to like Wolfenstein where they've created like these monstrous
Hmm.
experiments. It's fantastic.
He's also
Produced
in
by J.J.
20,
Abrams. It's
he's
great.
also in 22 Jump Street as the quarterback, and I forget that every time. But great movie.
Great movie.
Great
Talk about your
movie.
horror
21
adjacents.
and 22 Jump Street are great movies.
But that's actually a good segue for what I wanted to bring up next, which, you know, it's not quite thriller, but it is like the comedy horror, because those aren't necessarily spooky. I guess they're more like thrillers in a sense. They're heavier on the comedy, like something like, you know, Shaun of the Dead or Zombieland. Pretty much any modern zombie movie will have a good dose of comedy, I think.
Yeah, you
Um,
mentioned Dawn of the Dead last time. That had a good
yeah,
amount of comedy
yeah,
in it.
yeah. So I think that's another thing, a place, Cabin in the Woods even,
Yeah.
where you can dull the fear factor by adding comedy and kind of get right up to the line of like a traditional scary movie, but maybe make it a little more palatable for people who may not normally be interested. Evil Dead 2.
Yeah. Did you guys ever see Tucker and Dale versus Evil?
I did. That movie is phenomenal.
It's
Is
so
it
good.
phenomenal?
It's
Have you
incredible.
seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh my God, Jansen. It is
I
It
just
is a
don't.
treat.
I don't seek out. I just don't seek it out. Like even if
get it.
I know it's not
I
like
get it.
I know it's not scary, but it's just nothing I'm like turning on a Friday
Yeah.
night
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
You should
And
check out Tucker and Dale. It's great.
if the listeners walk away with one suggestion, it has to be Tucker and Dale versus Evil, because it is just an I mean, it's one of the most genuinely genius ideas for a film that I have ever seen. It's so the way it subverts just about everything you can think of is fantastic.
So if you don't know
Knowing,
what it is,
yes, go ahead,
essentially
please.
it's two hillbillies. You know, they have this cabin in the middle of the woods, and it's very much like, you know, oh my God, this is a horror film. And these kids come up, and everything about their appearance, the hillbillies' appearance, screams they're going to kill you. So
Yeah,
they
the
think the
hills have
whole
eyes,
time,
like all the homages
Oh, I
to
have seen that.
hillbillies in the thing.
they think that these people are trying to kill them, but really they're not. And they just keep getting into accidents along the way that ends up
Horrific,
horrifically.
bloody accidents. Yeah,
And it's
and
great.
the poor hillbillies just end up being around them circumstantially, like, or you know, I think there's one scene where somebody's blood like sprays all over the one of the hillbillies, and he runs after one of the friends to warn them not to go in that direction, and he's like, wait, and the person's like, oh my God, and then they have a horrific death, and it's just like it's and then like
Terrific.
it's such a great I mean, it's very Cabin in the Woods,
Hmm.
like
Mhm.
sort of just a riff on a horror film. Man, it's good. I'm gonna have to watch that again because it's
It's
so
so
good.
good. It's on Netflix.
Is
Oh,
it?
that's great.
See, anything on Netflix that really helps me because like I'm like even when it's on Hulu, like I just don't use it as much. And I'm like, oh,
Right.
what a chore! I gotta go over to
Yeah,
Hulu.
gotta go all the way
But
to Hulu.
Netflix, I'm like, all right, easy. Knowing what we know now, is Contagion a horror movie with Matt Damon?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's very, you know, it's you know, it reminds me a lot of Outbreak from the '90s. I don't know if you guys ever saw that one with Dustin Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, it's definitely horrific, you know, but it's
Living, it's even worse. I gotta tell you.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Gotta say, really felt the impact of that movie 6 years later.
yeah,
Um, I don't know
Sky, what
because
about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? He literally rips a man's heart out. I mean,
that's a messed up movie, man.
they
I
eat
mean, but
brains.
it's still adventure, you
so
know,
great.
like
No,
that's
it's
it's
definitely not a horror movie. I just wanted to bring it up.
but yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's fun though, man. Like that's the thing too. Like a lot of these '80s movies really did kind of do that with adventure too. Like, you know, the Goonies had a
That's
horror
a
element,
scary movie as a child. Like
you
it's
know.
like you got this deformed man, like monster man. You've got
Mhm.
this old woman right out the gate, just like evil.
Yeah. Well, think about
Like
Matilda in early '90s, you know,
Yeah,
like with the principal.
love Matilda though.
big
Right.
Matilda stan.
Could watch it any time of the day. You
But I
can
think
do
that's the
it,
thing
Brucey.
is, you know, horror really can blend itself to any other genre in small doses,
Hmm.
right? And still work.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
well, even like you said, even in small doses, like it's very effective in anything. Like if it's
Yeah.
flip it and make it just a straight comedy, but there could be one scene where a girl is like, coming home and the guy's waiting in the closet and pops out, scares her, something like that, and it's like makes that character more endearing or
Mhm.
or something along those lines.
Well, The Simpsons have like some of the most beloved episodes, around horror, is the Treehouse of Horror episodes, and they always pay homage. They always really like reference these movies that they do. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it transcends genre.
Mhm. Mhm. I truly believe that. I think that in the same way that comedy can, you know, make a movie that much better, right? Like just a couple of lines here and there, like a couple of thriller spook scares can make just an action movie like Terminator, Terminator 2, or you know Aliens, which I'm gonna bring up later when we talk about monster movie. Like just because there's a version of Aliens and Alien 2 and all that that's just straight up action space adventure, right? And it leans more towards Starship Troopers than it does the horror genre. And
Right.
just in the wrong or right hands, there's a version of you know New Hope to the Star Wars movie that makes Darth Vader this incredible villain, and which he is, but just like a spooky villain that every time he's on screen you're filled with dread. So it's
I mean, his
it's
lightsaber's
inches.
red,
Yeah,
for a
right.
reason,
Yeah,
right?
it's inches in these films, that change the tone, and just these small little choices.
Well, and you
uh
see that sometimes in, especially these days, with like recut trailers or
Hmm.
recut, anything. You
mhm.
change some music, you switch around a little dialogue, and you go from, I mean, you can completely go from a comedy to a straight horror, let
Yeah.
alone something like, you can make Star Wars very scary, or a Goonies very scary, or an Indiana Jones, like anything adventure-y, you can make that very scary.
Mhm.
Yeah, if
Um,
you took Snoke and you just took him away from the Star Wars universe and you spliced him into another film, it'd be terrifying.
Right. Yeah, if you put Snoke in any Earth-based film, it's absolutely terrifying.
That's right. Well, since you've already brought it up, why don't we just fully transition there,
Yeah,
Sean? Why don't you start us off with some? I'm gonna let you two carry this segment.
this
By the way,
segment.
I'll
Well,
chip in. I have seen several, but I haven't seen them enough because I've seen them once
Well, you've
right.
to
seen Jaws,
lead a
I'm sure,
discussion.
right?
I've
Yeah.
seen Jaws, yes.
King Kong, monster
Seen King
movie.
Kong, Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
I'm even though I have no idea if it's any good because I think I've seen it like 3 times on like ABC when I was 8. I'm very I like the Godzilla with Ferris Bueller in it. That's my favorite Godzilla.
Godzilla 2000.
Yeah, sure, sure. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, so I mean, monster movies have been around Hollywood as long as they've had, I mean, just pictures, honestly. Like, you can go all the way back to black and white soundless films, with horror monsters, and then,
A
you
lot of
know,
German expressionist films.
yeah, Nosferatu, maybe the first horror movie ever, in some ways. Just, creepy things that go bump in the night that, terrorize people. Dracula, maybe the most popular monster story ever told, or
Yeah,
Frankenstein.
Universal
Frankenstein.
Horror,
Yeah.
Universal Studios Horror, it really, it set all that in
hmm
motion.
Yeah, and I mean, I would even classify some zombie movies as monster movies, because even though there's much more of them, there are, I Am Legend, great monster movie.
Oh
Um,
man, that's a great movie.
so I mean, if I had to pick,
Favorite
like I
monster
said
movie?
earlier, it's probably Alien or Aliens, one of those. I think the monster is absolutely terrifying, right? It's something that literally is a parasite inside of you that kills you on leaving, and then its child kills the rest of your friends with its effing acid spit. So
Yeah.
like, terrifying monster, terrifying concept, being on a space station millions of miles away from home with no communication to the outside world, just getting terrorized by a group of monsters. Just love that concept. Love the Alien movies.
Yeah.
Is Venom a monster movie?
Sure. I
I'm
guess
watching it right now, actually. So
it's
like,
the closest thing to a monster movie I guess the superhero world has at the moment. I mean, in a way,
We got more Mobius with
Mobius is
Leto.
coming out. Yeah, Mobius coming out. I mean, in a way, I guess all superhero movies have some element of the monster factor because, the bad guy happens to be a monster in a certain way.
if I had to go off the top of my head, just thinking about it right now, like my favorite monster movie, probably like the original Mummy. I don't know. Brendan,
Okay,
love
That's a
it.
Brendan
fun
Fraser.
one.
That's
That's
a
a
Yeah,
fun
great.
one.
Those
That's
are
a good
great
movie.
movies.
That's a
that's
really
a
good
fun
movie.
one.
It's if you put Temple of Doom and made it,
A little bit
10%
scary. Yeah.
scarier. Yeah.
It's got some great comedy. It's got a great
Yeah.
performance by Brendan Fraser. My brother, I mean, I think that was his favorite movie growing up because we
Yeah.
watched it on loop. Like it was
Mhm.
on all the time.
Yeah.
And especially as a child, there were some parts that were like pretty scary. Like, I mean, he's like making, he's turning people to dust. All the, other explorers who keep opening things, like
Yeah.
stop opening things,
The
guys.
little bugs that get up under your
Oh, the little
skin and
bugs,
eat you from
bro.
the inside
The
out.
little bugs.
I had so many nightmares about those things.
The little bugs were so scary. And then I think it was on like a few weeks ago or a couple months ago. And the CG of the bugs is just not
Bad.
great. Yeah, it
Oh,
is
that
not
hurts my
that
heart.
good. It's
That
just
hurts my
like
heart. That's funny. Um, yeah. What about you, Sky? Favorite monster movie?
Off the top of my head, I'd say Cloverfield.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good
Cloverfield
choice.
really, it. I was hyped with the marketing for that film. I don't
Me
know if you
too.
guys remember it.
Yeah, it was
But it was so
incredible.
ambiguous. You had no idea what the movie was about. They had like little cryptic messaging, throughout their trailers, and which were pretty much just shots of New York, if I remember correctly. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually, you started seeing like, the Statue of Liberty's head going through the street, but you still had no idea what it was about. So
Yeah.
I went into this theater, I was so hyped, I was so ready, and I saw it, and I was just blown away. And I think like the next day I saw it again. Um, I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful movie. The concept, very similar to Alien, especially when they start like getting inside of people. And I remember there was this one scene. I can't remember her name right now, but she has one living inside of her, and that thing just like she starts like swelling up, and it just bursts out and it just goes
Yeah.
crawling,
Mm-hmm.
And then when you actually see the monster, the Cloverfield monster, at the end, you see it throughout, but like when you really get the face of it, like that's just some really good monster horror. And I think it has a lot to thank from Stephen King's The Mist, Frank Darabont
Yep.
film. I
Yep.
think without that movie, we may not have gotten Cloverfield, because The Mist has some really great monsters.
Yeah. The Mist is perhaps the angriest I've been at the end of a movie.
I can't watch it. It's so upsetting.
It breaks you. I
I almost
mean,
watched it the other day for the first time, and I was like, I'm not in the mood for this. So I'm kind of glad I didn't because you guys are really turning me off to it. So.
no, you
It's
should.
great.
I mean, it's
a
great.
great movie.
Yeah,
Great ending.
I'm sure it like is
5% of the movie, fantastic. The last 5% of the movie, you're just it's crushing because it's frankly maybe one of the only movies I can think of where the characters you root for or have just given up just completely 100%, and they make a critical decision, and then just the absolute bottom drops out, and then it just cuts to credits.
Yeah, it does.
There's no like, oh well, I can't believe we
resolution.
made that decision,
Yeah.
but I'm on my way to healing. It's just like, oh no, that's just how you're gonna leave the theater. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy school on Monday. Try to not be emotionally scarred by this movie for the rest of your life.
I still think about that ending,
Me
from
too.
time to time.
Me too.
That's how you know it was a great movie.
Every time I see Thomas Jane in a movie, I'm like, I can't ever forgive you. Yeah.
But yeah, I
Gosh.
mean, like, there's been so
Independence Day also.
Yep. Great
Monster
monster
There
movie.
you go.
there's been so many great monster movies, and we were talking about it, on Facebook, with a friend of mine, and about like kind of like how the monster movie films are dying. You know,
Mhm.
we don't really see too many. The last one that I can really think of was Underwater with Kristen Stewart, and they borrowed a lot from
Yikes.
Lovecraft.
That could not have been good.
No, it was actually pretty good.
Sky, don't lie to us, man.
You
Don't lie to
couldn't
the
really
people.
see what was happening for a large part of the movie, but you know, it was pretty good because I love Lovecraft, and they really did. They borrowed Cthulhu quite a bit, and a lot of his like different
Bro,
little.
if you don't watch that show right now, I'm gonna come over there.
I'm gonna
Um,
try to get back into it. Oh, and Life. I don't know if you guys ever saw Life with.
I didn't. I
Ah,
didn't see Life, but I want to. It was the Ryan Reynolds
yeah,
and
and
Jake
Jake
Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good, so good.
I mean, I
Well,
think that like Universal was really pushing for almost like a whole monster universe,
mhm.
They're
correct?
gonna get it.
And correct me if I'm wrong. They
Blumhouse.
have pieces of it, but I know that the Mummy was supposed to be a major piece of that. The
Big mistake.
reset with Tom Cruise, and I
The
didn't see
Invisible
that one.
Man is what's saving it right now.
Is that okay? So that's part of it. Okay, so that definitely helps. And then you have Skull Island, all right, like Kong. That's part of it too, and
Yep.
Godzilla,
And Godzilla, both the
um,
Godzilla movies.
which I haven't seen the second Godzilla, but the first one was pretty good. Um, and I liked the Kong movie, and I like, as I mentioned, I think I've mentioned a couple times, I love like through lines. Like I love, great, we have this movie, but like, in the last 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, we get tie-ins to bigger things. I like them when they pay off. If you're just going to do that and then not actually come out with everything else, then that's one thing. But I remember at the end of the Godzilla movie, they teased the other things. The Kong movie, they teased Godzilla, they teased the flying monster that I can't remember the name of,
Mothra.
but like,
Mothra.
yeah, Mothra. They teased all of those. So I like when those things come to fruition, if they do.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're talking about horror, but like, I think we can thank Avengers for creating these little worlds that
Right.
people
Yes.
Absolutely. Marvel. Change the way that movies do business. Um, I'm a huge fan of that Godzilla, whatever you want to call that, reboot, remake, retool in 2013, because the way they made that movie, and in a similar way, the way Cloverfield is made, is make you they make you earn the respect of the monster before ever really seeing it, right? And then that way you also connect with like the human characters, because that's what the monster movie is about, right? Like it's being completely in fear of the monster and also being in fear of the people that you're watching take on the monster. And I think
Yeah.
it's a really hard balance, because I know that one of the biggest complaints of that Godzilla movie is like, well, I want more Godzilla. Like, why isn't there Godzilla in every scene? And it's like, because I don't know.
Godzilla is just the catalyst. Like
Right,
Godzilla is just the problem, or
right,
even the thought of Godzilla is the problem.
right,
You're connecting with those characters, with the
hmm
people. How are they going to overcome it?
right.
And I like the way that's done. Like I
Yeah,
think it should be. I mean, Godzilla is only so deep at a point. Like even if he is like a nice guy, like he's
right.
only like his motivation can only go so far. Especially if the people don't understand it. Like you need a little exposition when you're going to show a 500-foot
hmm
dragon dinosaur monster.
Right, which is, I guess, another movie that's kind of a monster movie that does that so well is the original Jurassic Park, because you know that the T-Rex is out there, right? You know that that's the big daddy of them all. And the scene when we finally get the T-Rex, there are all these little things that are going wrong, and the thing that clues you into the T-Rex coming is the glass of water shaking, and you're just like, holy shit, like what is about to happen? Like this T-Rex about to wreck things, and he does. He comes
I
in and he
actually feel
wrecks
like
it.
that's kind of on the line. Like the second half of that movie's like on the line.
The younger you are, the more
As a child,
terrifying.
that is
Yeah,
so scary.
you
That
should.
is very
Yeah,
scary.
I just showed that to my son the other day, and he was on the edge of his seat for the last 30, 45
I
minutes
don't
of that
think my
movie.
wife watches it like to this day because like she was shown at very young age and like she's I'm not doing that. She wants me to ride the ride and we did and that's what's terrifying for me. But
Yeah.
and then we were our last subject was y'all two's favorite subject, right? The spiritual kind of out of this realm horror,
hmm
correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is-
Do you want
uh,
to have my favorite? Do you want to hear my favorite?
yeah, let's hear your favorite. Let's kick you, because you may not talk for a while.
I'm not going to talk for a while. I say it's my favorite because I think I've watched it like 2 or 3 times on my own terms. Like I have chosen to watch it. Like it's come on Sci-Fi. And
Casper.
no, no, this is actually real. This is real. But no, I've watched that many more than 2 or 3 times. 13 Ghosts.
Oh,
Oh.
That's
I
a
like
real
that
movie.
movie.
That's a
Mhm,
real movie.
It's
mhm.
That's a
I
fun.
love
real
that
horror
movie.
movie. Okay.
I
And
love that
I
movie.
don't know why, like it doesn't kill me because there's a lot of scary faces, but I don't know.
Ton.
I just watch it in a good place. Like again, I'm not seeking it out anytime soon, but like I'll catch a piece of it every now and then. Like if it's on, I'll catch a piece of it. I
Mhm.
can't tell you that I've even seen it all the way start to finish, but
Yeah.
like in one sitting, but like it's okay.
The character design is amazing in that movie.
Yeah,
Like the jackal is really terrifying.
I was gonna say, Jensen, that's like an all-time that movie's built around scary faces. Like
Yeah.
the
Do it.
whole concept of the movie is putting the glasses on so you can see the scary faces before they kill you.
But it's got a good behind. It's got a good like I feel like the
Sean's
intricacies of
face.
it. The intricacies of it, like it's
Mhm.
this house. I
The
don't know.
house, the house aspect is really cool. When the guy gets his head smashed by the sliding house door,
Yeah.
because the house. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really. I enjoyed the movie a lot. Is it a great movie? Probably not.
Probably not. No,
But
I'm
it
not yeah, I'm
is.
not saying.
It is a fun watch. I'm surprised of that for you. I really was not expecting
I
that.
am as well. And again, I'm not gonna get off this podcast and go watch it right now. And
It's too late for you.
I'd say that is too late, but I'd say the majority of the times I've watched it, it's probably like the evening. It's not even dark yet, you know. It's just sun's going down.
Yeah. So I have a an affinity for these kind of like the paranormal like movies, especially like the haunted house movies, because when I think about when I started watching horror films, they were the ones that my family like most often like rented or watched together.
So Haunted
Um,
Mansion for sure.
yeah, like Haunted Man. Yes, the Eddie Murphy movie. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. It was a top 5 most viewed film in my household growing up. No, but just like, and there's like 1,000 of them, right? Like you get people together and they're getting paid. You know, if you can survive in this haunted house for
Mm.
one night, you get paid X amount of money, or you get, you know, your the will or whatever. Like, however you put them in the haunted house and spooky stuff starts happening, and you know people get killed. I don't know why, but I love that concept, and I love just any sort of like haunted object, poltergeisty sort of like concept as well. Um, my one of my top 3 favorite franchises of all time is the Evil Dead franchise. Which has the Necronomicon. The first 2 movies are more like gore horror. The third movie is like a comedy. Um, I love that franchise, but I think you cannot go wrong with there's something wrong with the house, there's something wrong with the blank kind of movie, because again they make like probably 6 of them a year and one of them is bound to like stick, and now they're on Netflix.
Hmm.
I think I text you guys this, and yeah, it sucks not being able to go to the theater. But man, having all these like real movies just straight, like I don't have to wait for it. It's out the same day it's out. That's really nice. Like it's
Yeah.
just great because I can watch like Sky, you were saying before, a movie that premiered at Sundance last year that probably was going to get a big theater run is just on Netflix now, and
Yeah.
that's a big perk.
Yeah.
What
No,
about you, Sky? How do you feel
I
about
I love the Evil Dead films. I am so glad you brought those up. I watched Evil Dead 2 again recently, and
nice?
I love the first one. That one's definitely more serious, more horrific, and
Mhm.
then the second one is very much like it's like part remake.
Yeah. It's
They
like a
had a bigger
soft reboot. It's like the first soft reboot. Yeah.
yeah, they had some more money, but they really
Mhm.
lean into the comedy.
Mhm.
Like it is a comedy horror, and then the third one is just it's medieval comedy horror, and it's a
Yeah,
lot of fun. Bruce Campbell's a gem. He's so good.
love him. Can't wait to see
Uh,
him in this new Doctor Strange movie because he's definitely gonna be in there,
yeah, he has to be.
right?
Is Sam Raimi still doing it?
Yeah,
Nice.
they're
Okay.
they're about to start filming. They're like, I think a couple weeks away.
Wow, that's gonna be excellent. I mean, like Sean, I grew up on horror films. I didn't watch a lot of Disney films. I watched horror films just because that was kind of what my mom always put on. So introduced to the Halloween franchise, Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, all that stuff. Pretty early on. Um, and I think the first one that really hit me was probably The Exorcist, right? That was probably the first one that really like, oh man, this movie's pretty terrifying. But
Movie sucks.
fortunately, I was never really too religious, so I guess that kind of helped, on my part. And
How do
then
you feel
like
about The Omen?
the Omen's great too, but I mean I don't have a kid, so it kind of rules that out. Which is another reason why I don't want kids, because evil children and stuff. But
Yeesh,
uh,
yeah, evil children. They'll get you.
but speaking of evil children, this is not my choice or anything like that. This is not my pick, but the recent study for the scariest horror film, turned out to be Sinister. And like that one is all about the spooky kids, and the deity that they follow. And so I thought that was kind of
Jesus, just you
interesting.
saying it, man.
That was
Just
very
you
interesting.
saying it.
Did
See,
you ever see it, Jansen?
Yeah, I've seen it. I
Okay.
don't really recall. I didn't recall which one. Like I know I've seen Sinister. I know I've seen Insidious. But I can't like differentiate them in my head
and
by
that-
choice. When you
Yeah.
describe them, I'm like, oh yeah, that sucks.
well, that's my point because I've seen both. I've seen, probably most horror films from like 2000 to 2012, 2015.
Yeah.
But Sinister doesn't like I couldn't give you an actress or like nothing about that movie like sticks out in my head. So for that to be like the scariest movie, like I don't know. Maybe I was desensitized at the time, but
I think it's the tension that you're getting from start to
Mhm.
finish, right? Like I think if I remember correctly, it starts with people hanging from a tree,
Yeah, I
and
definitely remember that.
they're just,
uh-huh.
and it just does not let up. With the found
Uh-huh.
footage, I still remember the swimming pool scene very vividly, where they're just dragged on their chairs into the swimming pool and just they drown, and then
Yeah.
it's creepy. So I think that that's pretty much what it is. It's just a feeling of dread throughout.
Right. Ethan Hawke in that movie.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's great.
I'm looking at a list of like the best horror movies since 2010, and just so we're clear, Shutter Island was on there. Don't know what it means, but I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm not saying it was number one, but it's on there.
It's fun.
Because I was looking for one and I can't remember what it is, but I do remember she's like under the covers and something happens. It's not The Conjuring or that or whatever, and I don't think it was very good, which is why it's not on this list. But
Well, if
like I
you
said,
had
I watched
asked,
most of mine in college. Like that's
Yeah.
why I happened to see Insidious and all The Conjuring and all those.
if you had asked me maybe like 5 years ago, what was my favorite spiritual horror film, I'd probably been like, okay, well, what about The Conjuring or Insidious? I think that those are just really well done, brilliant films. But I kind of changed a little bit, and I guess you can thank film school for that. But it's kind of driven me more by theme, and I love It Follows. I love The Babadook.
That's on this list. That's on this list.
Mhm.
Both of those films are just, they're incredible. It Follows, the way that they do it, and it's so low budget, that you really don't even see the creature, or the thing, the entity. It takes the form of just regular people, and that's just incredible the way that they do it.
Mhm.
Don't like
And
that.
then The Babadook, the way that it plays on trauma and grief and a woman's inability to let go of her husband is
Yeah.
just
And
it's
the
phenomenal.
the son or I think it's a son in that movie, not a daughter, right? Because
Well,
it's her and her son.
Yeah, her and her son. Yeah.
Yeah, they both can't get
Yeah.
away from it because she blames the son, and the son has his own issues.
Right.
I mean, and we touched on this last week. Just the way that horror can craft these big scares around these intimate personal feelings that you have is just what makes it such an effective genre. Like it's not the monster kicking down the door that's going to get you. It's what's inside of you that's really going to call, it's your decision to, as that stupid Geico commercial I've seen 1,000 times, to hide behind the chainsaws instead of getting in the running car.
Yeah.
The way she
stuff like
says,
that.
the way she suggests something, and he says, "Let's hide behind the chainsaws," and then she goes, "Yeah, okay." Like, I think that's hilarious every time, though. It cracks me up. She's like, "Okay."
But yeah, I mean, The Conjuring, I love that movie. I think me and Sky had talked about this. I don't know if we were on the podcast or not, but The Last Exorcism,
So
fantastic
good.
movie.
So
Um,
good. So funny.
so funny, and then also terrifying at the end.
So okay, Jansen, there's this one part. So
So fun.
essentially, it's this fake exorcist, and he goes around and he films these fake exorcisms,
Okay.
and he's like, like I'm an established exorcist, and then he finds himself
In a real
well in
situation.
a real situation. But there's this one scene before that all that happens, and he's like preaching, and he's preaching to this documentary crew, and they're at this church of this like outdoor revival, and he's like, I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna talk about apple pie. And I'm gonna talk about it and I'm just gonna bring it into the conversation and people are just they're gonna go with it. And he's just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then we're gonna go over there, we're gonna get that apple pie, we're gonna put it in the oven at 350 degrees and we're gonna heat it up. And then everybody's like, can I get an amen? And everybody just goes, amen. And he looks at the camera and he winks. And it is just amazing how funny this movie is.
Mhm. It's a good
But then
movie.
it turns. It quickly
Turns
turns.
turns quick, turns quick. Um, I was just thinking about another movie that I have completely. I think we'd be remiss to not shout out The Host as a fantastic horror movie of the last
That was
couple of times.
so
Paranormal,
good. So
um,
good.
brilliant again. You know, commenting on the times and using something that we're so familiar with to scare us to our cores. Um, yeah,
And we're working on another guest from host. We don't
yes,
have it yet, but we are working on nailing it down. So just
stay tuned for
keep
that.
that in mind. Stay tuned. We're working on it. We're gonna secure it, guys. I promise.
Yeah, we're gonna secure it. So I guess before we go, um, of the three categories kind of we talked about, if we could give our listeners, maybe something to add to their Halloween day or, Halloween Eve watch list, what would be like, you can't have an effective Halloween without one of these movies?
Trick or Treat, I think, is
Trick or
probably the
Treat.
movie to watch. It's an anthology horror. It's four shorts. They're all connected together, and I mean, it really gets you into the spirit of Halloween, which that's what the whole movie is about, and it's terrific. Really great
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm. I'm gonna go with one I said last week. It used to be a tradition of mine. I'm gonna do it again this year. Definitely the remake of Dawn of the Dead, the Zack Snyder coming of age pick. Um, just a great zombie movie. Good couple of scares. Good couple of light moments. And an ending that won't make you want to kill yourself.
George Romero hated the remake.
Yeah, I do know that. He
Yeah,
hated it.
he thought that it just lost what the whole point of the movie was
Right.
supposed
Well,
to be about.
right, because the original Dawn of the Dead was this giant commentary on consumerism and malls taking
Exactly.
over the country and all that. And this was more just like a
It's a fun movie.
horror movie, just a fun
Yeah.
horror movie. Yeah.
And that's the whole deal with Romero, like with Night of the Living Dead, like that was a social commentary about like
Mhm.
race and
Yeah.
inequality, so I mean
Mhm.
he's all about that. So
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Yeah. Which makes me want to, real quick before, well, Jensen, give me yours and then I'll bring up this point.
Casper.
Huh?
Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Casper the Friendly Ghost.
I knew it
All
was
right.
coming up. I knew it.
Or Hotel Transylvania.
Another wholesome Sandler film, right?
Yeah.
I'm on an Adam Sandler kick, okay?
Uh, Adam Sandler in line to make the new Casper movie? Yes, no?
If
Voicing
what?
Casper? Should he voice a Casper movie?
I don't
Maybe
think
be
it should
the
be Casper. It'd be
maybe be
very
the dad
weird,
in a
old,
Casper.
creepy Casper.
Yeah, I'm a
but-
Casper.
I'm a Casper.
So a couple years ago, this is the point I wanted to bring up about zombie movies. I saw this claim that when there is, and this is perfect for the election, when there is a majority Republican government, we get more stories and films and TV shows about vampires. And when it's the opposite, when it's a majority Democratic government, we get more stories about zombies, because the idea is when the Republicans are in charge, there always seems to be this whole push about lust and the female body and all that sort of stuff.
Is this a fact?
I don't know.
No, I mean the statistics. I didn't know the statistics, not the lust. I mean,
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I remember the exact statistics of the article, but I know that they had some like real deal
They seem to
statistics in there.
stand
They
up.
seem to stand up when I read this article like 6 or 7 years ago, and just that the societal sorry guys, the societal part of the country just like has a thirst for that sort of vampire movie where there are people preying on young people. And the opposite for zombie movies is that there's all this group think, and we're just a herd of mindless zombies just chewing up whatever we can get our hands on. So I don't know, just something to think about.
Now I just
Well-
want to talk about specific movies within these subgenres of horror. Like vampires, zombies. I want to talk about that, but real fast before we go, Charlie Brown's Halloween.
Heartbreaking, devastating, a travesty, a debacle, tomfoolery,
Shenanigans
just
is what it is.
shenanigans,
Absolute shenanigans.
malarkey, any word you can think of. The gall is what I would say.
Yeah.
The unmitigated gall.
Do you think it's gonna do
For
what?
those that have no idea what we're talking about, because I didn't let Scott finish it.
Well, because it's absolutely, frankly, absurd.
It's
Yeah.
frankly absurd. For the first year, like freaking ever. I mean,
Yeah.
since the 1400s, essentially. Charlie Brown. What's the after the colon? Like Great Pumpkin.
Yeah, the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Great
Yeah.
Pumpkin Charlie Brown will not be on regular television because Apple Plus is streaming it exclusively for you poors out there. I did just buy a new iPhone so I can watch it, but I don't
What a
like it. But I don't like it.
But talk about like all the people in like rural communities,
It
that
sucks. No,
you
it
know?
really does suck. Actually, like I think that's awful.
yeah.
Honestly, where the fuck does Apple get off doing so? I know we don't like cursing on this show, but
We
I
can throw
feel
in a
like
beep.
this is an app moment. Where do they get off thinking they could do something like this? And
Where does whoever owns Charlie Brown get off?
where are the Schultz?
Yeah.
Where's the Schultz family
Yeah.
coming in? I mean,
Did they-
it's
They're making
still
money.
Charlie Brown comics, I believe, are still in print. Like they just
I believe
recycle
so.
them. So now you're telling me that my son won't ever get to experience. Well, I mean, like Jan said, I have a free 3-month subscription to Apple Plus.
I
So
can borrow you guys' login, right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Here. So we're gonna post the links to our logins so that everyone in one of our listeners can join in. Yeah, no,
Absurd.
it's stupid.
Just
It's absurd.
absolutely
What a
absurd.
money grab, and
It
makes
is.
me want to switch from my iPhone to a Google Pixel.
If I didn't have so many Apple products, I'd probably done it a long time ago. But I'm just like, well, I'm just so integrated. I'm a sheep. I'm a zombie, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, sheep or not, remember one thing: don't care what you're doing, but you should go vote in the next couple of weeks. This comes out on Friday, the 23rd. Which
I can't
means
believe we're like
where
less than
we
2
are in
weeks
North
away.
Carolina, you've got a couple more weeks of
Mhm.
early voting, so definitely go vote.
You can early vote on Halloween.
You can early vote on Halloween, however you want to say it. And then next week, guys, we are talking the rest, the classics, right? Our slashers, our Jasons, our Freddys, our
Freddy versus Jason's.
our Freddys versus Jasons, our Michaels, maybe a little of Jeepers Creepers. I mean, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing it out there. But
Yeah, we'll get
all
'em.
of them. We're talking the classics. Sky doesn't like Jeepers Creepers, I guess. I don't know. I didn't see that coming. I expected he would have liked that reference. Any
It's
words,
okay.
Sky? It's okay.
No, I mean,
What about
it's not-
Jeepers Creepers 2? They're on that bus the whole time.
I mean,
On the way
I'll
to
give
an
you
athletic
Jeepers.
event.
Jeepers Creepers 1 is okay, but Jeepers Creepers 2 is trash. But
Well, we're talking them all next week to end up our horrific month.
Hmm.
So stay tuned for that. Of course, we always have. Are we done? Are you guys good?
I'm good.
Okay, just making sure.
I was just gonna remind you, Jansen, to bring up our lovely listeners from the great state of Washington.
Oh, that's right. Let me bring it up. I need you to small talk for a few more seconds
Yeah. Well,
because it's a hilarious tidbit.
here's
And I
my
think
small talk. Have you ever wondered why you can buy a pack of hot dogs and get 10, but hot dog buns only come in 8? What's the deal with that? Huh?
it
What am I
is
gonna do with my 2 extra hot dogs?
pretty wild.
Huh? That's a pretty small American problem.
All right,
But
I found it. I found it.
that's my small
I've got
talk
it. It is a small American problem. We face that problem in the Silvers household.
every
And
single day.
once again, not every day. And more hamburger bun related, but I see your point. For some reason, on our last episode, 7 of the downloads, which I'm not going to reveal our numbers because, maybe there's some advertisers courting us, but let's just say 7, pretty high percentage of our listeners were from one community in Washington, the state of Washington. We personally are in North Carolina. So, whoever's listening in Lake Stevens, Washington, just know I don't know if it's one person who listens 7 times or maybe 7 different people, but please reach out to us. We'd love an email. How'd you find us? That's wild. I mean, we've got people in the Southeast and stuff, but that's definitely the farthest west that we've got.
Yeah, this is pretty far west as you can go.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get much west. Oh, I see a Los Angeles, California. This is from all episodes now, but specifically last episode, there were like $6 or $7 from Lake Stevens, Washington. So first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you,
guys.
Sean, for reminding me. I find it hilarious just because I don't know where Lake Stevens is. Never heard of it. You've probably never heard of Greensboro, so it's like no offense, but I just thought that was really wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Please reach out.
Please
Twitter,
reach out.
Facebook,
You can
anything.
reach out on Facebook where you can find us at Weekly Pop-Up. You can find us on Twitter at Weekly Pop-Up. You can email us at Gmail at weeklypopup@gmail.com. Of course, subscribe, rate this podcast. We'd appreciate it. If you have anything you want us to talk about, let us know. Like we said, we're going to finish up horror next week, and then I think we might do a little Mandalorian action since it comes out around
some
the same
Mando.
time.
Mhm.
Got some exciting guests on the horizon, I think. Like I said, got to nail down a few, but I think that's all we have for now. We really appreciate you listening.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, guys.